All right, brothers and sisters, let me begin by congratulating you and AFSCME for the extraordinary work you are doing in standing up for the working class of this country. When I look around America today, frankly, I am sick and tired that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I know about that because I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. I am tired of going around to city after city, including Las Vegas, and seeing nationally 500,000 people who are homeless. And millions more who are paying 40, 50, 55% of their limited income in housing. I am tired of seeing 87 million Americans having no health insurance or are being underinsured, with the United States being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all. And I want to thank AFSCME for supporting the idea of a Medicare for all single-payer program. And I am tired at a time of living in a competitive global economy of seeing hundreds of thousands of bright young people not being able to afford to go to college, and 45 million people who are dealing with outrageous levels of student debt. And that is why I am proud to have helped lead the effort to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and cancel all student debt in America. And I'm tired of seeing so many of our fellow Americans working for starvation wages, $8, $9, $10 an hour. And I've been very proud to work with AFSCME, SEIU, and other unions to move that federal minimum wage to $15 an hour and make it easier for workers to join unions. At the end of the day, and I say this not because I'm here today in front of AFSCME, I say this all the time. If we are going to take on the greed and the power and the corruption of the corporate elite of Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry and the prison industrial complex, if we are going to take them on, we need an unprecedented grassroots movement to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of our country. And second of all, to create an economy and a government that works for all of the people and not just wealthy campaign contributors. So brothers and sisters, we have got to grow the trade union movement. I have legislation to do that. And when we talk about an unprecedented grassroots movement of millions and millions of Americans, the trade union movement has got to be in the middle of that movement. And as president, we're not going to be an administration which says, well, on one hand, you got the unions, on the other hand, you got corporate America. My administration, and I say this as somebody who has a lifetime 100% voting record with the AFL-CIO, who has not only voted, but has marched on more picket lines than I can remember, who worked with the workers at Amazon and Disney to get them a $15 an hour minimum wage. Our job is to create a government that works for the working class of this country and not just the 1%. Thank you all very much.
Sorry, Senator, that's all the time we have. No, I'm kidding. I want to start with a question we've been asking every candidate, and just to get on the record here today. After Nevada just recently passed collective bargaining for state employees, should that come from the federal government? Should every state have to have collective bargaining for state employees?
Of course they should. And the legislation that I have introduced called the Workplace Democracy Act will be, when implemented, the most sweeping labor law legislation since the 1930s. What it will do is provide card check so that 50% of the workers in a unit plus one, when they sign that card, they will have a union. And that legislation, John, does away with so-called right-to-work legislation as part of Taft-Hartley.
So the Trump administration has stacked its upper ranks with corporate leaders.
Yes.
In your administration, would you appoint union leaders and people in the labor movement, and not only in top roles, but even as labor secretary?
Hey guys, you got to start asking me hard questions. No, I will appoint multi-billionaires whose job it is to take jobs in America and move them to China. I'll appoint an EPA director who doesn't believe in environmental protection. I'll appoint the Secretary of the Energy who doesn't believe in climate change. Look, what I just said, and I know, our campaign is a little bit different. Our campaign is a little bit different. It is going to be a government of workers, by workers, and for workers.
So just to be clear and not get another accusation of asking a softball, Senator, would you pledge right here today to appoint a union leader as labor secretary?
I will either appoint a union leader or the strongest person that I know who is going to stand up for the working class of this country. All right? But there will be, let me be very clear, I don't like answering those questions because it depends on who's out there. But there is no question, I know, I think on my feet, I don't think on my backside here. All right. This I do promise you, that there will be no labor secretary stronger in the defense of the working class and trade unions than the one that I will appoint.
Okay, so let's move on to your favorite topic, and that is Medicare for All.
Yes.
And there is a robust debate going on, I think you'd agree now, within this primary about whether Medicare for All is the best policy. I mentioned earlier, I had a good friend who's a public employee text me just yesterday saying he has a great plan. He just became a public employee. It's a wonderful plan. You have the Culinary Union, which you know about here in town, Senator.
Yeah.
They have negotiated for a Cadillac plan
Good.
for their employees. There are people who are worried that in Medicare for All that they are going to be able to lose plans that they really, really like. How can you guarantee that they won't?
I wrote the damn bill. No. All right, forget it. All right, first of all, there is a debate. But a lot of the energy and the money from that debate comes from the health insurance industry. And when you see the ads on television demonizing Bernie Sanders, understand that those ads are paid for by an industry, that's the drug companies, the insurance companies, and others, that last year made $100 billion in profits, pay their CEOs exorbitant compensation packages, while at the same time, 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured, and we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. So that's the dynamic.
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, I know that. All right. So in terms of the union workers, let me say this. Medicare for All provides comprehensive health care to every union worker and every American. Covers all health care needs, including hearing aids, eyeglasses, dental care. And unlike the current system where your employer, and I was a mayor and I had to deal with this stuff, all of you know that city governments every year are looking around, how can I get a better deal? I'm going to move from Blue Cross to United, to this one, to that one. On the Medicare, and by the way, some 50 million people every single year lose their private insurance. On the Medicare for All, you're going to have stability. All we are trying to do is take a very good program, Medicare, expand its benefits, and over a 4-year period, go from 65 to 55 to 45 to 35, and then cover everybody. So to answer your question, John, The advantage for union workers is that right now, every time you guys sit down and negotiate, what your employer says or what the city or the town says, okay, we're going to give you 3%, but by the way, you're going to have to pay a higher deductible or a higher copayment. Is that right? All right. That is in the midst of every labor negotiation, public sector, private sector. We will do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee all of you health care is a right so you can sit down and negotiate decent wage increases. And if an employer, as will be the case, ends up saving money, they're going to pay less in taxes than they now do in premiums and benefits for you, that difference, that savings, will go to the workers under our legislation.
So I'm going to let Amanda jump in here in a second, but just one really, so, and this is a yes or no question, although all of you people do never answer yes or no.
No. Yes, I don't. What
Can you guarantee to these workers here and to a culinary worker in Las Vegas that if Medicare for All becomes the law of the land, that the plan they get under the Sanders Medicare for All will be at least as good, if not better? Can you really guarantee that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we can. Look, John, here's what because we do away with all deductibles. One of the disingenuous aspects of the healthcare debate is people say, well, you're insured, you're insured. Well, you may be insured, but you may have a $7,000 deductible. All right, you may have a significant copayment, and you may not be able to go to the doctor when you're sick. And by the way, let us not forget, 500,000 people in this country this year will go bankrupt after they leave the hospital. That will not happen under Medicare for All. I don't know how many of you know this, and we got to fight hard to get through a lot of the media blackout on this. You go to Canada, you have open heart surgery. You have cancer treatment. You're in the hospital for a month. Anybody know what the bill is when you come out of the hospital? Zero. You go to any doctor you want, any hospital that you want. So the issue is not just insurance. You know, Trump believes in insurance. It's junk insurance that covers nothing. We're talking about comprehensive health insurance without any deductibles, without any co-payments, and with very, very comprehensive coverage.
So, Senator, I wanted to ask you about student debt. Student debt.
Yeah.
We talked to Senator Warren earlier, who also has an ambitious student debt relief plan. Hers would forgive about 95% of debt, and yours would do 100%. And she said part of the reason that she chose that number was because she looked at the numbers, and doing 100% could widen the racial wealth gap. What's your response to that?
No, I don't think so. I think, as I understand it, I don't have all the the facts in my head now. I think our plan will reduce the racial wealth gap from 12 to 1 for younger people to 5 to 1. That's pretty significant. And one of the reasons we have decided to do what we have done in terms of canceling all student debt, and by the way, just to be clear, we pay for this expensive bill. It's a $2.2 trillion legislation over 10 years, which includes making public colleges and universities tuition-free. We do that with a tax, a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. All right? We bailed out Wall Street. It's Wall Street's time to help the middle class. But Amanda, one of the reasons we did what we did and cancel all student debt, and it also has to do with health care and a number of other programs. I think the American people are sick and tired of filling out forms. The complexity. It's in healthcare, you got to fill out 1 million forms. You get rejected by the insurance company. You got to argue with them. If you're talking about cancellation of student debt, what happens if your income goes up? What happens if your income goes down? You got to fill out another form. I think we have a generation, a millennial generation now, for the first time in the modern history of this country, will have a lower standard of living than their parents. All right? They were told, go to college, take all this debt, no worry, you're going to get out, you got a great paying job, you'll pay it off. Not the case for African Americans. Unbelievable, I just learned this recently. Listen to this, for African American young people, 12 years after they took out that debt, they are more in debt than they were when they took it out in the first place because of interest rates. All right, and that is really crushing an entire generation. So I say, let's get rid of that debt entirely. We will pay for it by a tax on Wall Street speculation. And when all of those young people have money in their pockets, you're going to see, I believe, a huge increase in job creation and entrepreneurship, because people now have the money to do what they would like to do.
Senator, I know you want to hear from the members, and they have some questions for you. So let's start with the first live question right now.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Calvin Chong. I'm a correctional officer. I was recently injured by the inmates. And I'm hoping with the collective bargaining that we can help to make our job more safer. We know the negotiation with a union means the CO like me are better trained and safer. My question is, private prison with poorly trained CO put the people at risk, which is why we will ban them in Nevada. As a president, will you ban the private prison from the state, from the federal system, and encourage more states to do the same?
Very important question. In 2016, 3 years ago, I believe I was one of the very first national candidates to say that we must ban private prisons and detention centers. And for a couple of reasons. From a moral perspective, at a time when we have a major crisis in criminal justice, a broken system, I don't believe that large corporations should be making millions of dollars by locking up fellow Americans. And I think their priorities are different than the priorities of the American people. We want fewer people in jail, not more people in jail. And we want, when people to get out of jail, we want them to be educated and be able to readjust to society and not come back into jail again. So to answer your question, absolutely and positively, we will ban private prisons in the federal government, and I will do everything I can at the state level as well.
Is the private sector good for anything, Senator?
Yeah, it is. Good question. The private sector is the sector of society which creates most of the wealth in America, and I want them to continue to do that. And by the way, when we talk about Medicare for all, and people do not have to stay in the job they're in just because they have good health insurance, you're going to see millions of people leave those jobs and go out and start businesses and create new products and new industries. But here is the other half of that equation. While, of course, the private sector creates the bulk of the wealth in America, what we also have to understand is the function of the private sector is to make as much money as it possibly can. That's what they do. What we need is a vibrant public sector which says, how are we going to have the best child care system in the world? And make it affordable for all of the families in America. Private sector's not interested in that. They can't make money from low-income and working-class people. How do we rebuild our crumbling infrastructure? How do we address climate change? Right now, one of the scandals that we have is not only the wealth of the corporate elite, and I'm talking about Wall Street and the insurance companies and the drug companies, but we're talking about the corruption of all of these entities. All right? If you look at Wall Street, that caused the economic collapse of 11 years ago. If you're looking at the insurance companies where price fixing is rampant, where you're looking at the prison industrial complex, etc. So what we need to do is take a hard look at the needs of the American people. That is addressing homelessness and the crisis in affordable housing. It means guaranteeing health care to all people as a right. It means making sure that all of our kids, regardless of their income, can get a college education and that we cancel student debt. It means addressing the crisis of climate change. The fossil fuel industry lies to us every day. And in doing that, they are endangering not only this country, but the planet. So to answer your question, obviously the private sector plays an enormously important role in creating wealth. But the function of the public sector is to address the needs, and they are many, of the working class and low-income people of this country.
All right. We have another question from a member. It's on the video screen right here, Senator.
My name is Monica De Leon, and I'm a member of AFSCME 3299, and I'm a unit secretary at the University of California in Irvine, where we have been fighting outsourcing and income inequality. As president, what would you do to protect women and people of color from the disparaging employment practice like outsourcing? Additionally, will you commit to have women and people of color represented in your administration's highest ranks?
Well, it's funny that she mentions, but I was at a rally in California, I think it was in Los Angeles, speaking with many of those workers. So number one, and very importantly, at a time when we have a president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, a religious bigot, and on it goes. I think the American people understand that we need an administration that really reflects who America is. And we are black and white and Latino, Asian American, Native American, we are gay and we are straight, we are native born, we are immigrant. That's who we are as a people. That's what my cabinet and my administration will be. It will reflect what America is. And secondly, I would say to the question, look, I've spent years in opposition to disastrous trade agreements in which the greed of corporate America is such that they are shutting down profitable enterprises here in America and moving abroad in order to capture the cheap labor that exists in other countries. And I will tell those companies that are outsourcing in America that if they want federal contracts, they'd better be good corporate citizens. And that means not have a situation where CEOs make 300 times more than their workers, not where they're cutting back on the benefits that their workers receive. So we can use the federal government in many, many ways to make sure that corporations treat their workers with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
Thank you, Senator. Now it's time for your closing statement, which I have a name for, by the way. 1 minute for all.
Okay. Many of the ideas that I've talked about this afternoon and I've talked about for years, the media characterizes as radical and extreme. They're not. They really are not. To say that workers in America should earn a living wage and not live in poverty is not radical. To say that women should not be earning 80 cents on the dollar compared to men, that's not radical. To say that we should grow the trade union movement, that's not radical. To do what every other major country on earth does and guarantee health care to all people is not radical. To suggest that when we face the existential crisis of climate change, that we are aggressive in taking on the fossil fuel industry and transforming our energy system to save the planet for our kids and our grandchildren, that's not radical. That's common sense, all right? To make sure that all of our kids, from childcare to graduate school, can get the education they need. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that is not radical. But here's what I think distinguishes our campaign from the others. And that is, I am telling you today point blankly that Bernie Sanders alone can't do it. No president can. We are taking on incredibly powerful people who have unlimited sums of money, and they want it all. Their greed and their corruption has destroyed for 45 years the middle class of this country. So what I am asking of you today is, yeah, I want your help for me to win the Democratic primary. I want your help for me to defeat Donald Trump. But I want your help for something else, and the help of the entire trade union movement. And that is to bring millions of people together to transform our economy, to do the things that many other countries are already doing, so that we have a nation that works well for all of our people and not just the 1%. Thank you all very much.